The Helion-class destroyer Indomitable lay dormant in the vast orbital graveyard surrounding Earth. Its hull, once gleaming with the pride of humanity's greatest naval accomplishment, now bore the scars of 3 centuries' worth of micrometeorite impacts. Commander Vieira Calicos stood on the observation deck of the salvage vessel Reclaimer, her breath catching as the spotlights illuminated the enormous warship. "Gods of all systems," whispered Ensign Orash beside her, his 4 eyes widening in sequential order. "The archive holograms don't do it justice." 3 kilometers of pure human ingenuity, Vera replied, her voice reverent. "Built before we understood quantum mechanics or interdimensional physics, before the Galactic Assembly even knew we existed." The Galactic Assembly, a collection of 17 advanced species, had welcomed humanity with open appendages 50 years ago. They'd shared technology, medicine, and cultural knowledge, but they'd also made one thing abundantly clear. Humans were the primitives, the newcomers. The charitable project, until Fleet Admiral Lysandar had proposed Operation Lighthouse. "Status report," Vieira demanded, turning away from the viewport. Lieutenant Moravan Kesh, her chief engineer, looked up from his console. His dark skin contrasted with the silver neural implants at his temples, one of the few assembly technologies humans had fully integrated. Power core is inert but intact. Hull integrity at 78%. Primary weapon systems offline but salvageable. He paused, a slow smile spreading across his face. "And the main reactor chamber is pristine, just like the others." Vieira nodded, feeling the weight of anticipation in her chest. The Indomitable was the 7th decommissioned warship they'd inspected in the graveyard. 7 ships, 7 intact reactor chambers, 7 vessels thought worthless by modern standards. "Prep the boarding shuttles," she ordered. "I want boots. On deck in 30 minutes." As her crew scrambled to obey, Vera touched the communication badge at her collar. "Admiral Lysandar, this is Calicos. The Indomitable is suitable. Proceeding with Phase 1. The Admiral's voice crackled through subspace. "Excellent work, Commander. The Haldrexian ambassador is getting increasingly curious about our salvage operations." Vera's jaw tightened. "Let them wonder. They've underestimated us from the beginning." "Indeed." A pause. "The Assembly Conclave is scheduled for next month. How many vessels will be ready?" She looked back at the massive silhouette of the Indomitable, then to the distant shapes of other derelict warships floating in. "The graveyard. All of them, sir. Every single one." In the quiet of space, as the boarding shuttles prepared to dock with the ancient warship, Vera remembered the condescending words of Ambassador Thorylix 3 years ago at the Technology Exchange Summit. "Your quaint fission reactors are charming historical artifacts. Perhaps you could donate one to our Museum of Primitive Sciences?" The Assembly was about to learn that humanity's primitive technology wasn't obsolete. It was just waiting for the right moment to shine. 2 weeks later, the orbital shipyard vibrated with activity. Massive construction drones swarmed around, the hulls of 23 resurrected warships. The Indomitable floated at the center, its hull now gleaming under fresh coats of metamaterials that absorbed light rather than reflected it. In the command center overlooking the operation, Fleet, Admiral Lysandar Econ reviewed holographic schematics with his senior staff. At 78, with a shock of white hair and eyes enhanced by military-grade optical implants, he commanded respect with his mere presence. "The Haldrexians have filed a formal inquiry with the Earth Diplomatic Corps," reported Ambassador Renali. Her slender frame seemed to bend under the weight of her words. "They're demanding to know why we're rebuilding our obsolete fleet." "What did you tell them?" asked Lysandar, without looking up from the schematics. "That we're preserving our heritage, creating a historical fleet for ceremonial purposes." Fleet Admiral Lysandar snorted. "And they believed that?" "They want to believe it," Renali replied. The alternative would force them to reconsider their assessment of us. Commander Kalakos stepped forward, gesturing to the holographic display. Sir, the integration of the Q-tap devices is complete on the first 7 vessels, including the Indomitable. Initial tests show... She hesitated, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction before continuing. The tests exceed all projections. Each retrofitted vessel now generates 300% more power than our most advanced modern designs, with 0 radiation signatures. A heavy silence fell over the command center as the implications sank in. For decades, humanity had struggled to match the Assembly's energy technology. Their starships could traverse the galaxy in weeks, while humanity's fastest vessels took months to reach neighboring star systems. The key difference had always been power generation. Until Dr. Eshe Mbeki had discovered the Q-tap principle, a method of drawing quantum energy directly from subspace, a method that required massive, physically dense cores to function as anchors. Cores exactly like the ancient fission reactors in Earth's decommissioned warships. How long until the entire fleet is operational? Lysander asked. 38 days, sir, replied Kalakos. The Admiral's expression remained impassive, but his eyes glinted with cold determination. Perfect timing for the Assembly conclave, Lieutenant. Dre Harkin, head of strategic operations, cleared his throat. Sir, there's been a development with the Nexari situation. All eyes turned to the tactical display where a cluster of red dots indicated Assembly military vessels near the Nexari homeworld. The Nexari representatives have been ejected from the Assembly. Their petition for technological aid was denied. Assembly forces have established a blockade around their star system to prevent destabilization of the galactic order. Lysandar's expression darkened. The Nexari, a peaceful, newly spacefaring species, had committed the same sin as humanity, developing too quickly, asking too many questions, refusing to accept their designated position in the Assembly hierarchy. How many Nexari ships have been destroyed? Renali asked quietly. 17 civilian vessels attempting to leave their system. The Assembly claims they were smuggling prohibited technology. The Admiral straightened, his decision made. Accelerate the retrofit schedule. I want half the fleet operational in 2 weeks. Sir? Kalakos questioned. The conclave isn't just about showing our strength, Commander, Lysander said. It's about making a choice, about what kind of galactic power humanity will become. He gestured to the gleaming shapes of the reborn warships. We're bringing our old ships to light, and with them, power is about to take a new form. The Nexari blockade zone hummed with tension as 5 Assembly cruisers maintained their positions around the embattled planet. On the bridge of the Haldrexian, flagship Righteous Doctrine, Supreme Commander Voxthalan monitored the situation with detached efficiency. Another refugee ship approaching the boundary, reported Sensor Officer Grell. Small vessel, approximately 80 life signs. Voxthalan sighed. These primitives never learned. Standard procedure, warning shot across their bow. If they continue, disable their engines. Yes, Supreme Commander. The elegant Haldrexian vessel pivoted gracefully, its weapons systems charging with a soft purple glow. On the main view screen, the tiny Nexari ship appeared, a crude, boxy transport desperately trying to escape the quarantine. Warning shot. Fired, announced Weapons Officer Pelthak. The energy beam sliced through space just ahead of the Nexari vessel, but instead of stopping or turning back, the transport accelerated. Disable their engines, ordered Voxthalan, his 6-fingered hand waving dismissively. Pelthak targeted the refugee ship's propulsion systems and fired. The beam struck true, but at that exact moment, space itself seemed to ripple. Unknown. Spatial distortion! Shouted Grell, her voice rising in alarm. Massive energy signatures appearing! The view screen flickered as 7 enormous shapes materialized between the Assembly blockade and the Nexari transport. 7 dark, angular vessels that Voxthalan didn't immediately recognize. Until he did. Human warships, he whispered in disbelief. The largest of the vessels, the Indomitable under Commander Kalakos, broadcast on all frequencies. Attention Assembly Forces. This is the Earth Defense Fleet. The Nexari transport is under our protection. Stand down. Your weapons systems immediately. Vox Thelan's face membranes fluttered in indignation. This is an assembly security operation. Human vessels are not authorized in this sector. Remove yourselves at once, or face consequences. On her bridge, Viera Kalikos smiled thinly at the Haldrexian commander's image. We've already scanned your vessels, Supreme Commander. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defense fields. She paused. However, we have yet to demonstrate our offensive capabilities. As if on cue, the Indomitable released a single pulse from its forward array. The energy wave, invisible except for how it distorted the star field behind it, washed over the assembly. Flagship all systems on the Haldrexian vessel went dark for precisely 5 seconds before sputtering back to life. "Status report!" demanded Vox Thelan, genuine fear in his voice for the first time. "All systems temporarily neutralized," reported his chief engineer. "The pulse was... I've never seen anything like it. It temporarily suspended all quantum functions within our systems without causing physical damage." On the view screen, Commander Kalakos' expression remained impassive. "That was approximately 8% of our offensive capability, Supreme. Commander, the next demonstration will not be so gentle." The Nexari transport slipped past the blockade, nestling behind the protective wall of Earth vessels. "This blockade is hereby dissolved," Kalakos continued. "The Nexari people are now under Earth's protection. Any aggressive action against them will be considered an act of war against humanity." Vox Thelan's 4 eyes blinked in sequential rage, but he was no fool. "This violation will be reported to the Assembly Conclave." "We're counting on it," replied Kalikos. "In fact, we'll see you there. Earth's delegation will be arriving with appropriate escort, as the human warships escorted the Nexari transport to safety." Vox Thelan stared at their retreating forms. The vessels were ancient by design, relics from humanity's past. Yet they had just negated the technological superiority the Assembly had taken for granted. "Send word to the Assembly High Council," he ordered quietly. "The humans have become a problem." The great hall of the Assembly Conclave stretched nearly a kilometer from end to end, its crystalline dome capturing the light of 3 suns. Representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations filled the tiered seating, their murmured conversations creating a symphony of languages. At the center of the hall, the High Council, composed of the 7 eldest species, occupied an elevated platform. First speaker. Zarashvok of the Haldrexians prepared to call the conclave to order when the massive entry portals slid open. The human delegation entered. Fleet Admiral Lysandar led the procession, followed by Ambassador Renali, Commander Kalakos, and a dozen other Earth representatives. They wore simple dark uniforms with silver trim, deliberately understated compared to the ornate regalia of the assembly species. "The humans arrive precisely on schedule," announced Zarashvok, his tone suggesting this was somehow disappointing. "We welcome Earth's representatives to the 327th Galactic Assembly Conclave." Admiral Lysandar bowed slightly. "We thank the Assembly for its welcome. Before we proceed with the agenda, Earth wishes to address the conclave regarding the Nexari situation." Discontented murmurs rippled through the gathered representatives. Zarashvok's membranes fluttered in irritation. "The Nexari matter has been settled by Council decree. They attempted to acquire prohibited technologies and have been appropriately sanctioned." "Prohibited technologies," repeated Lysandar, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber. "Like efficient energy production? Medical advances? The same technologies the Assembly denied to Earth for decades until we developed them independently?" The first speaker's 4 eyes narrowed. Your interference in assembly security operations is the act of a rogue state. The Council has prepared sanctions. Before you announce those sanctions, interrupted Lysandar, perhaps you should look outside. The dome of the Great Hall darkened momentarily as an external feed replaced its transparency. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber as representatives beheld the sight in orbit around the assembly homeworld. 23 Earth warships, their massive hulls gleaming darkly against the stars. Ships that, according to assembly intelligence, shouldn't have been capable of reaching this system for weeks, let alone arriving undetected. The age of assembly technological superiority has ended, stated Lysandar calmly as the dome returned to transparency. As has the era of assembly dictating which species may advance and which must remain subservient. Zarashvok rose from his seat, his ornate robes shimmering. Is this a military threat, Admiral? Because if it is an announcement of a new reality, corrected Lysandar. Earth proposes the formation of a new organization, the Galactic, cooperative, all species equal, all technology shared, no more prohibited advancements, no more blockades against developing worlds. He gestured to where the Nexari representatives stood among the human delegation. The Nexari have already joined, as have the Vorathi and the Telsians. Shocked whispers erupted as representatives from 2 mid-tier assembly species stood and moved to join the human contingent. "This is outrageous!" hissed Zarashvok. "The assembly has maintained peace for millennia by carefully managing technological development." "You've maintained a hierarchy," countered Ambassador Renali, stepping forward, "with yourselves perpetually at the top." First speaker Zarashvok's composure finally broke. "Your primitive warships don't change the balance of power. The assembly fleet outmatches yours 100 to 1. Admiral Lysandar smiled for the first time. "Numbers aren't everything, first speaker. Would you care for a demonstration?" He nodded to Commander Kalakos, who touched her communication badge. Throughout the assembly system, every quantum communication relay, every transit gate, every automated defense platform simultaneously went offline, just for 10 seconds. Just long enough to make the point. In the stunned silence that followed, Admiral Lysandar addressed the conclave one final time. "Humanity brought our old ships to light because you taught us an important lesson. True power isn't about who has the newest technology. It's about understanding what you already have." He surveyed the assembly, meeting the eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, of each species' representatives. "The cooperative will convene in one standard month on Earth. All species are welcome to send representatives, as equals, not as patrons or clients. The era of technological hoarding is over." As the human delegation turned to leave, Zarashvok called out, "And if we refuse your invitation?" Admiral Lysandar paused. "Then you will find yourselves increasingly alone in a changing galaxy. Our ships will continue to bring light to those you've kept in darkness." Outside the Great Hall, as they walked toward their shuttle, Commander Kalakos fell into step beside the Admiral. "Do you think they'll accept?" she asked quietly. Lysandar watched as representatives from 3 more assembly species hurried to catch up with them, their translators already working to open diplomatic channels. "Some will resist," he replied. "The oldest powers always do. But most will recognize that the universe has fundamentally changed." He smiled, watching as their shuttle systems powered up with clean, abundant energy that would have been deemed impossible just weeks ago. "Humans brought their old ships to light," he said, "and power has taken a new form indeed.